So you've decided that you want a career in advertising and you're thinking, shit, what now? My name's Chris Murphy and I'm here to help you break into advertising. In today's episode, we talk to Beth Freedman, who's the CEO of Dentsu X, a global media powerhouse. And she's going to share her journey and her tips and tricks on how to help you get into advertising. But more specifically, if you're interested in account management, then this is definitely the episode for you. So please like and subscribe below and enjoy the show. Hey Beth, welcome to Shit What Now? How are you?
I'm good, thank you, Chris. It's really good to be here.
Oh, brilliant. Well, it's a pleasure to have you on here. Would you be able to tell us a bit about who you are and what you do?
Sure. I'm Beth Freedman. I'm the CEO of Dentsu X here in London. Dentsu X is a full-service media agency, but it's got quite a unique set of capabilities, especially around the social media space, so creative, community management, but also all your through-the-line media.
Yeah, brilliant. Super interesting stuff. And of course, global clients as well. We keep you very busy.
We have a great set of clients, global clients, local clients. We get the pleasure of working with Jaguar Land Rover.
Brace yourselves.
I think for me as an American, there's something really cool about getting to work with heritage brands in the UK, and that's certainly one of them. We work with, big and small. We do a lot of work with the charities here in our community management space, and a real variety of work types. But I think that's the cool thing about this industry, right? You get slightly different stuff every day.
And it depends also on what department you're in. Not only are you working on different clients in different industries, different categories, but then you're also doing different things for each of those clients. For example, Jaguar Land Rover, you'll be looking at new innovations within that industry as they go from being car companies to mobility companies, but then also around just advertising their new models and how do we do that in a more interesting and innovative way than the trademark car porn shots that we've all come to like. It's super interesting.
I think you're giving me flashbacks to where we met, which was working on Toyota.
That's right.
Which was my introduction to working in the automotive industry. And you're absolutely right. I think the other thing for me that's really interesting about Jaguar Land Rover is it's purely sat in the luxury space, which is an interesting and difficult place to be during, the last year, given everything that's happened in the world. So I think what we do for a living is a privilege because of that, because so much changes, you're exposed to so many different things. You get, I used to work on Cadbury, so I spent a lot of time talking about chocolate, and I worked on cars, and I talked about cars. I've worked, with financial services. You some of it you love, some of it you don't, but it's all really interesting. And I think I can't think of a job I could do that would give me that kind of variety, except for this one.
That's it. And I guess as you know, the mission of this YouTube channel or I guess this initiative is to really help young people break into advertising and see what it's like on the other side of the fence. So for you, is that what you saw when you were back at college? And did you kind of, judging by the response, no, but just happy to get your perspective on that, because for me, it definitely wasn't like that.
No, I mean, look, I coming out of college, I had a degree that people went, what is that? And zero work experience. I mean, I had an excellent college career. I loved what I did. I worked for our American football team, and every summer I had to go back to school early for preseason camp, which meant that I never had a job. Like I never had an internship. I never had work experience. I was a temp. And not as challenging as it was to break in the UK, but in the US, you still, for most part, to get into the account management side, you needed to have had an internship of some sort. I didn't know anything about advertising. I just wanted to be employed when I graduated college. Honestly, I just didn't want to have the idea that I'd have to move back home. And so I started looking for jobs while I was writing my thesis. And I found this job, assistant media planner. I had no idea what that meant. It was in New York City, which was in my sort of East Coast, sort of Boston to DC sort of area I thought that I'd be interested in working in. And long story short, they offered me the job. And I was enamored by the fact that when I went into the office to do the interview, sitting in the waiting area, and there's like a life-size Tonka truck. There's a half-court basketball thing set up. I was like, well, this is amazing. And I met my future boss, and she said, look, you'd be working on G.I. Joe and Transformers and Tonka. So I was boys, toys, and vehicles. Well, that sounded cool to me. So I was like, yes. And look, it was the most amazing beginning to this crazy journey. But I remember showing up on day one and looking at a spreadsheet and very quickly realizing that there was math involved in the job. And I was like, wait, sorry, did you hire me? What is wrong with you? But you know what, it was just, you know, like I say, it was the most excellent beginning to a journey. It was a small agency. I got such good learning, people I still, you know, am in touch with. And it started me off on this epic sort of path.
Yeah, brilliant. And so it's interesting, actually, it brings me on to my next point. So you started off in the media space, and for a lot of people who are, I guess, you know, on the other side of the fence, on the graduate side of the fence, because I was like yourself, I actually went back, did a similar thing, came back early for preseason rugby. I was first team player. So I kind of prioritized sports because at one stage I thought I wanted to do that for a living. And you know, so for me, I didn't even know that there was a distinction between a creative agency, like the place where they actually come up with the ideas, and then the media agency that kind of do all the, figure out basically where the ads go. And just looking back through your history as well, you actually made that transition from media to creative agency. So could you talk to us a bit more about that and kind of what inspired that change?
Absolutely. You know, when I think about it, and I've been thinking about it a lot lately, because I've just been sort of going back through my memory banks of all the people who've had such an impact on me. And when I started, actually, agencies were just agencies. So every agency had a media department and a creative department. So it's funny because account management was definitely a creative function, media separate. But I realize now when I say account management, people are like, what, a media agency or a creative agency? It's like, you know. But I was so lucky to start in that world where it was all in one. You know, it was the word integrated didn't have to be used because we were all integrated. We're all in this together. But as I evolved in my career, so did the industry, and the industry started splitting off and boutiquing. So media agencies became media agencies because the bigger ownership companies began to realize that there were profit centers in separating these things out.
It's about security.
What is that supposed to mean?
Money!
And that there were pieces of business that didn't want to hire an entire, agency when they could just hire the media department. And so the last media department or media agency that I worked for was MPG, Media Planning Group. And there was an interesting seminal moment in my career, which was actually, if it was sort of the realization of something someone had said to me a long time earlier, which was when I was very, very junior, still in media in New York in an integrated agency, and I had just a brief sort of audience with the chairman of that agency. I just happened to fall across his path during a new business pitch, and I remember him pulling me aside after the whole thing and saying, "You should go into account management," which he meant creative account management, and I said, well, why? And he goes, because account people run agencies. And I, at the time, was slightly cheekier than I probably am now. And I was like, yeah, well, media people run media departments. I like what I do. And he said something.
How did he respond?
He said, fine, you know, in a couple of years, you're going to come to me and ask me to let you run a piece of business, and I'll give you something and whatever, blah, 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 blah. Anyway, I had left New York after, not because I left New York, and was working at MPG when I had this moment where I realized that the challenge of the media agency and the creative agency was that they were competing with each other instead of actually working together. And I fundamentally believe this, no matter where I work and what agency I'm in, if you try to do those in opposition, you will do less good work for your client 100%. Because they are intrinsically linked. But profits screw everything up in that regard, the chasing for the P&L. And so anyway, I happened to be embedded in a creative agency because as part of the network, MPG and Arnold worked together. So I was embedded in an Arnold office with a small team, but I worked for MPG. And I just saw it more and more as, instead of it being something where it should just create a nice synergy, it was just too much opposition. And then even within the agency side, MPG then put its digital piece into media contacts.
Right.
And so all of a sudden, media planning for me became one half of a sphere, because anything online needed to be managed by a different set of people, which seemed really silly. Because if a client asks you where they think, where do you think we should put our money, it wasn't like I should just stop. Well, I'm sorry, I can't talk about that side because that side is someone else's. It was the beginning of me realizing that was probably going to keep client from being at the center, and what's right as a solution, pragmatically, from being at the center. And that was the moment where the people at Arnold said to me, you know what, leadership is leadership. Why don't you come over onto the creative side and run pieces of business? You'll still have a chance to be a part of media, but you'll also be looking at everything. And it was just the perfect moment at the perfect time where, like, I realized that's what I was trying to do from my role in media. I was still trying to be a part of an integrated play. And so I said, you know what, I want to give that a shot. And that was the beginning of that trajectory. It was also the moment that I had to send a bottle of wine to that particular person who told me, someday you're going to do this. I was happy to send him a bottle of wine and say, you were right.
It's funny how some people just arrive at those kind of shit what now moments where you kind of go like, you have this epiphany and you go, oh my God, it's suddenly so clear.
Well, it is. And because for me, that shit what now thing was, am I just totally done with this industry? Because this is really pissing me off. It doesn't make sense. And in fact, thank God for a couple of people who just set my perception. They helped me change my perception to broaden it, to say, well, actually, don't give up. Just broaden what you do. Let's elevate to a different place, and maybe you can solve that problem from a different position. And it was life-changing for me.
Totally. And it's funny now, right, that the industry is going back to where it came from in terms of consolidation and big agency groups. We're seeing it down here in this market. I'm sure it's happening over where you are at the moment in the UK. It's kind of just putting client at the center of everything so that they have a one-stop shop for all the needs, which it's crazy to look back and think, how did it even split off in the first place? How did we get away with it? And now that we're kind of bringing it back in, it's good, because I think it's making people like myself, stretching my skill set. I'm at the hallway here. We're a boutique agency, but we do media as well. So I was kind of thrown into the field to be like, yeah, cool, totally know about it. But to the same effect, it's one thing that you said to me a while ago when we were working on a pitch on Toyota was, I think it was like, if you feel nervous, you're growing, or something to that effect. And they kind of, you just hang on to that and you go like, well, yeah, like this is a good thing.
You know what, I completely identify with what you're talking about. I mean, my most current move into this role puts me squarely back into the media environment, whereas I've been mostly in the creative environment for the last half of my career. And there's a bit of imposter syndrome you have when you realize that in the 10 years I haven't been a media specialist, a lot of shit's changed. But the most important thing that I learned, and I learned this actually when I went from media to creative, is the humility to ask if you don't know. Like, it can be really hard, because a lot of people who end up in this track are a bunch of high achievers. You're one of them. I like to think I'm one of them, but we're all just a bunch of people who, like, we're used to doing, like, we work really hard and we're used to having a good outcome from that. But when you're a high achiever, it's really hard then when you put into a situation where you don't know what you're doing, because it's really uncomfortable. And your gut instinct is, well, I always know what I'm doing, so I'm just going to pretend like I know what I'm doing, which is really dangerous. And even more so, the more senior you get. And when I made the switch from media into account management on the creative side, within the first few months, I got sent on a television shoot as the only suit on it, with all the senior clients, with a senior creative crew. And I just remember having to sit down with the producer, who was a real, like, veteran in the industry. So it wasn't like he wasn't going to sniff out that I didn't know anything. And I just said, look, here's the thing. I've never done this before. I promise you this. I will ask you questions, but I will only have to ask you them once. So just be patient with me, but I promise you once you tell me, I know it. And I feel like that's sort of it's always been my sort of way of feeling okay about saying, look, I don't know everything. And I have had to do it in this job, over and over. Is like, okay, can I just ask you to explain that to me? Thank you. I'm good now. I've got that. But it's something nobody should be afraid. Nobody should be afraid to ask questions. And we should not create environments where people can't ask questions, because expensive fuck-ups happen when people are afraid to ask.
100%. And I think people in our position, especially in account management, you, as you hit the nail on the head there, you feel like you need to have all the answers. And whilst, yes, to some degree, it is our job to find the answers, it's not our job to find the answers there and then. There's nothing to stop you from saying, let me chat to so-and-so, I'll come back to you and figure it out. But yeah, I know exactly what you mean, where you just go, yeah, I think so. And then you go like, yeah. Yeah, that'll be fine. Invest in that. That'd be great. Yeah. Disclaimer, I've not done that in this role. If any clients watching.
Hey, the whole way, he's cool. He's got it. Don't worry.
So Beth, that's super useful. I think, in terms of talking around just trusting your gut and actually be willing to be vulnerable and embracing imposter syndrome are all sort of really good traits to have. Which brings me on to my next question is like, when you're looking out for hiring new people and the next generation of people coming out of college and what have you, what are some of the traits and personalities that you look for?
So I am a bit biased because I want, if somebody hadn't been open-minded with me, I wouldn't have the career I've had, right? At zero experience, somebody hired me. I had zero experience necessarily in one train, but they hired me anyway. Like people have always, sort of been open-minded about that. I think it's a lot harder these days. So for me, what I try to do is, look, I want you to be, smart. I want you to be interested, and I want you to be interesting. Like that, to me, that is the core. If you're coming in new, I don't care if you've done it at all. In fact, in some ways, it's probably good if you haven't, because then you're going to be taught it the way that we want you to do it. I think, Chris, I didn't study anything to do with they didn't have an advertising course at my college. When I found out people had degrees in it, I thought it was really funny, because I was like, how'd you learn that from a book? Yeah. Like I learned everything on the job. Now, obviously, there's a lot more to it than just, like I said, media planning at the time, versus marketing and econ and all of that. But for me, that core set of things is to show those things, to show you're, smart and interesting and interested. And what I would say is that when you are going into an interview, be fucking prepared. Have a point of view. So if you're going into a creative agency, look at the work they've done. Look at maybe their biggest client, then look at their biggest client's competitor. Come in prepared to talk about the work. Have a point of view. It's okay. Creative is subjective. I think you and I both know this.
Yeah.
But if you're able to at least sort of enunciate why you think it's good or why you think it's not, or if I've looked at this piece of creative, I think I can figure out what the brief was behind it. Because I think that shows just an interest. It shows you've gone a step beyond. It shows that maybe you've gone beyond just looking at our website and pulling a little bit of language and playing it back to me. Because I think that's the thing. I want people, we can teach you the stuff you need to know about how to do the job, but you can't teach people that sort of interest, that sort of, that curiosity. I mean, this is not an easy industry by any stretch of the imagination. Like if it is easy, you are doing a job that will probably bore you. My theory is there's lots of this industry that's harder than it should be. And I believe it should be hard, but hard for the right reasons, right? It should be intellectually stimulating. It should be competitive. It should be testing your limits, but all in ways that are positive. What it shouldn't be is, populated with a bunch of jerks who make things hard for no good reason. But I think that, there's a bit of I think it's a privilege. I've said that before. And therefore, I'm really protective of the people I put into it because, I want people to treat it that way. I mean, I can't think of another job where you get to be working with the kind of interesting people we get to work with every day. Totally. And so I think, if I were coming into this now and the advice, or if I were, to give advice to people coming into it now, it is just that, just show that you've done the work. Be humble about that. Don't come in and be like, I'm so certain, because there's nothing so certain in this. But just show you cared enough to have a point of view and really think about what that's rooted in. I think that'd be a game-changing interview for me.
Absolutely. And I think where again, quick disclaimer, do like universities, where I do think that there is a bit of a disconnect between the academic world and the practical world, in the sense that of what people are looking for. I remember when I was doing my master's in marketing and advertising, they were trying to quantify where creativity comes from. And it's like, well, talking about theories of creativity, and it's like a creative does not look at, so some philosophers' theory of creativity and then has this grand process. No two creatives are the same. That's why these people are like they are. And as you say, I think a lot to do with this industry is a mindset, and it really is just an attitude. And ultimately we want people that give a shit and will work hard, not just for the companies. We're not saying we're slave drivers, but are proud of their output and want to put their best output out there. And they're 100% the people that straight away you'll know within the first 5 minutes of an interview, you go, this person's on it. Like this person's great. Especially now that I'm on the other side of the fence, making those hiring decisions and feeding back on those people. And it really does. Those people really do shine out. Even just saying things like, "Oh, Chris, I saw that you've started a YouTube channel," and just be like, "Oh my God." Well, firstly, chuck it a subscribe and a like, but then also, but then also, it just shows that people care, and you ultimately want people that care. And yeah, as you say, you can teach people things and move from there. But yeah, brilliant, Beth. This kind of brings me towards the end of the interview, and I think we kind of touched on it a little bit. If you were a grad at university, or as they say in America, college, looking to get into the advertising game, what would be your sort of pro tip? And you're allowed to have more than one.
I think I'm going to have to answer that sort of within the structure of this current environment too, because I think it's not very easy. I think the thing is, you got to have a plan. You're going to be doing a lot of outreach, trying to find the opportunities. And I think you need to be prepared and patient to be sending a lot of emails and trying to make contacts. What I would say is, networking is something you'll do your entire career. You might as well start now, and do it in a way that is meaningful. So be really respectful of the fact. The last thing someone wants to do is feel like you just want to, if you're saying, "I'd love to have a chat with you," but really all you want is a job, we can all tell. So really be, honest in your intent. But I would say, look, most of the people in this industry love to talk about their journey. They love to talk about themselves or their journey. All of us have had an interesting story of some sort. And if you are happy to, I think what you want to do is take the benefit of getting exposure to those people, but truly actively listen to what they're saying. So it's not with an agenda. It's not, can I, at the end go, "By the way, are you hiring?" It is truly about taking the time to get a broad array of perspectives as you're looking to start your career, or even if you're already in your career and you're looking to move. With honest intent, where you're really only trying to connect to take the benefit of their experience, to ask them questions. You will, by virtue of having a positive conversation, leave a positive impression, and you will be top of mind if something comes up. And I think that's a really important thing, because most, I remember just always going through HR or headhunters, but the truth of the matter is, those of us who all of a sudden get presented with a hiring opportunity, "Beth, we need this, and can we find..." Someone might be top of mind for me because I've just had a conversation with them, or I remember meeting them and they left a positive impression, and I sort of file it away as I'd love to talk to them when we do have an opening. So for me, I think it's about, if you treat your job search, whether it's your first job search or your next job search, truly as a process of gathering information, of connecting with people, with, of course, the hope that something will come for it, but also understanding it's a short, mid, and long-term type of approach, and being really, open and honest in your intent. That's really a smart way to, and a better, probably more effective way than just sending your CV or your resume through to a bunch of people, because you know what? not going to go anywhere.
100%.
The other thing I would say, Chris, is that when you send that stuff, if you are applying, write a cover letter, like write an actual letter, show that you've done your research, make it, do not use a sort of copy and paste same thing. Like think of it as the most important client you've ever spoken to, and how do you show them you understand their business? I mean, that kind of stuff sticks when you see it. But at the end of the day, and sadly it's true, a lot of this is luck and timing. But you can help yourself by having left that strong impression, leave that positive impression, because you will be, just like any brand that we work for, you will be more top of mind when the time comes to be looking.
One of the grads I talked to, Ben, who's now a junior planner, he talked about how he used a similar language to you, in the sense that he never went out to get a job. He was just sort of chatting to different people, getting different perspectives, learning about different cultures of agencies and what clients, and really what role he ultimately wanted. And, he had a very systematic approach of saying, right, well, I'm going to chat to 2 people from this agency and chat to 2 people from that agency, and just really get a rounded opinion. But one thing that he did that I thought was pretty profound was he almost treated his approach to agencies as if he were a brand. So to give you an example, he knew that DDB had McDonald's. He actually made like a McDonald's meal and put all of his details on a meal and sent that in. That stuff's going to pop up straight away. I've had a similar thing when I was at Grey London. This kid sent through a bowl of fruit and just put all of their like sort of strengths around that, and just their CV was almost like a following thing. When I got my job at Grey London, I sent them a video of me doing an elevator pitch of why I'm good for the role in an elevator, and attached my CV. So cheesy, so cheesy when I look back at it now, but it worked. And whenever you chat to anyone who's at any of those agencies, Dentsu, Saatchi's, Fallon, they've all had some sort of quirky way that they've got in to get people's attention, because that's ultimately the industry that we're in. We're about we're about creativity and getting people's attention. So I think one thing that I've always said to people who've come with advice is treat yourself like a brand, and it's a proposal. You're not kind of just going like send it into the sort of sausage maker and then just hope, just pray a job comes out of it. Before we wrap up, was there anything else you wanted to add?
Well, Chris, what you said just is something else that I think people have as a tool that people aren't using enough of, and certainly not grads, which is LinkedIn. LinkedIn is the one place you can create your own professional brand. And so, it becomes, look, we're all going to look at anything that we can find, because you're going to put your LinkedIn profile up, you're going to have your social media, all of that stuff. If you curate your LinkedIn, if you put some thought, you create your own, take a point of view on there, sharing things. It's a really interesting way that I've found to look and see if someone's, already got a point of view, or what they're sort of professionally like. And I would say that most people at all levels are still not really curating their brand very well on LinkedIn. But the fact of the matter is that it's a really, really interesting tool that someone who's new to the industry could use to create almost a portfolio, almost a thought leadership, something you can reference in an interview. So I would super recommend looking at that and thinking about how to use that as a tool. What I would not recommend is just trying to connect with a million people, because I have to say that the thing that annoys me the most is people trying to connect with me with absolutely no reason or reference why, as opposed to take a few minutes to say, I'd like to connect with you because of X. I'd be really interested to have a conversation or whatever. It doesn't always, work, because I might, realize there's absolutely no reason for us to connect. But for the most part, at least you've taken the time to tell me why you've asked for that connection. Sure. And my last piece of advice is just write thank you notes. My God, it takes 2 seconds to send an email. I mean, I'm still a big fan of written thank you notes, but given the way that the Postal Service works anymore, no offense, I love those guys. But, it could be 3 weeks before you get my thank you note, and therefore it's lost its meaning. But send a quick note, put something in that really resonated with you. But it's a simple thing that so many people don't do anymore. But man, when I think about how someone's going to work with clients, that to me shows me they're always going to think about that extra thing that full-rounded experience. So do that.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. When I interviewed at Grey for my first job, I didn't actually have the emails of the two guys that interviewed me, but I had the email of the HR lady, and I guess I just kind of figured out, well, I knew that their first name and last name, and just used the same, I guess, prefix, and just sent a thank you on the train on the way home. And both of them responded, and they said that when I got the job, they said that no one else had done that. A friend of mine who he has his own sort of boutique agency up north says that he asks his receptionist what she thought of the people coming in. You know,
Totally.
do they come in? Are they a stress pot? Are they looking down? Were they rude to her? Were they condescending? You know, did they pick up and read any of the stuff in the lobby? He'd always makes his hiring decisions based upon the impression that that person makes, because ultimately it's not about the face that they put in front of you, because you're always going to put your best self forward. They just want to see what you're like on an everyday basis.
Absolutely. I think that's brilliant. Without question, too. I mean, that's something I just actually posted on my LinkedIn fairly recently about the people who probably understand the most about brand experience are the people that are in charge of agency brand experience. That's someone at the front desk, your facilities people, et cetera. And it's true. And, you know, if someone doesn't treat everyone with the kind of respect and friendliness and calm, you can't be sure they can't, you know, that they're going to, that's those moments, those clear human naked moments, right? So I think that's brilliant. That's such a good strategy.
Absolutely. And I think we're both thinking of the same person that pops into your head in terms of brand experience, which is our good friend, Pierre.
Yes.
When I interviewed at Saatchi's, I was pretty stressed out. I was like, big breath, come in, walk up the steps, see the nothing is impossible on the steps. You go, oh my God, like heart's pounding. But then he comes in, welcomes you, gets you a drink, makes sure you're all good. And and then obviously when I got the job there, he was lovely, just a super helpful human being. And to your point, it makes all the difference.
It does. And we're lucky to have, I think that the best humans in our business recognize that their team is a lot bigger than just simply the people that they report into or that report into them. It is everybody involved and around. It's often your clients as well. That's what's awesome about what we do. Like that mix of humanity, that mix of crazy personalities. That's why it's great. And if you come in with a healthy dose of respect for that, a healthy dose of sometimes awe, but also just the balance of knowing you're part of that. Like you're part of that crazy chemistry.
Yeah.
That's a good career. We're lucky. We got a good thing going.
100%. Even when we're burning the midnight oil day before a pitch, bring it on.
Not as good on those days, maybe.
No. It does feel great as soon as you walk out the pitch meet and you have that sigh of relief, and even better when you win it.
Yes. Here's to that.
Here's to that. Well, Beth, I can't thank you enough for coming on. This has been a great conversation. If I were a grad watching this, it would just be super, super helpful. Well, hopefully they will read it. I'll do a blog post about it. But but yeah, thank you so much, Beth. And I'll let you crack on with the rest of your day.
Well, thank you for doing it. I think it's a real service to a lot of people. And thank you for inviting me to be on it. I feel quite honored.
You're welcome, Beth.